Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Kansas City-based guitarist, composer, arranger, and teacher Jeff Shirley on the 2022 CD Blue Gold. He ventures into a tasty collection of new tunes on this latest release. He opens up about the album, COVID life, rebuilding the Kansas City jazz scene, and so much more. Enjoy.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for sending the album. Thanks for taking a minute out. I really enjoyed listening to it. It's just, there's a sonic punch to it. It's very nice.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for checking it out.
Yeah, totally. You know, before we get into the album, obviously, not only Kansas City musicians, but musicians worldwide, artists have gone through quite an extreme time. And, for Kansas City, the scene has always been so rich and flush, and now we're kind of getting back to it. How did you do during COVID? How did this time treat you? I think the last time we spoke was in either 18 or 19, so life is totally different now.
Yeah, COVID, hopefully we can say we grew, hopefully we can say we got some good lessons out of it and we wound up on the other side. So I think there's a lot of good things there. But for me, I could say that I gained the COVID 20 pounds or whatever, at least. And so the past, I've been trying to get back, I've lost a good amount of weight in the past, 6 months. And so feeling good about that. And, one of my favorite interviews of yours is the Sonny Rollins interview, because I love listening to Sonny talk. I find him so inspirational. And, he's someone that, he was concerned about eating healthy even back in the 50s. And I love these people that were ahead of the times. Even someone like Eden Abez, the guy who composed the song Nature Boy, he was actually a Kansas City pianist under a different name. Went to California and wrote a song like Nature Boy. I mean, he was a vegetarian in the 50s. I just find that amazing. And these people that are so ahead of the curve. And Sonny, on a recent interview, said, jazz musicians the jazz musician of the future, what does that look like? And he said, we should be healthy, and we have to kind of hold ourselves to maybe a higher standard and, not only try to be a great player, but a healthy person and even spiritually healthy and things like that.
It's so interesting you mentioned that. And, Sonny is such a transformative figure. I think about so many aspects of that interview that, I always say that the jazz community, and I truly believe this deep down, I've seen a lot of professions, a lot of people in my life, and I'll be 50 this year, so I think I've been around a little bit, and I have never met a group of people that is as talented, friendly, humble, and grounded as jazz musicians. And the higher you go up the ladder to someone like Sonny, the more gracious and beautiful they are. I remember one time a few years ago along those lines of nutrition and just older jazz musicians being very wise and sage souls. Bobby Watson was on KCUR getting interviewed, and right before he got off, the interviewer said, "So is there any other advice that you would give, or is there anything else you want to say?" And he just said out of the blue, "Drink your water." So there's nothing more important, and it was so out of the blue, but it's so essential. And I told him that in an interview about a year later, right before the world shut down in 2020, I interviewed him, and I said, when I heard that, it's so essential. And he was coming from like a musician standpoint. You got to stay hydrated. But I think about that in general. It seems really simple, but you do need to stay hydrated. And, those older cats just have a beat on things that are simple yet profound.
And Sonny is so obsessed, so interested in growth. He loves his personal growth. And it's amazing to hear him say that he, even listening to his past recordings, he doesn't necessarily feel great about him, and he's always wanting to grow. And I can identify with that feeling. And I think music and health, it's like in music we learn to, you practice today for how you want to sound next week. It's not what I tell some of my guitar students, it's like growth is not always obvious or immediate or painless even. And so practice today for how you want to sound, next week or tomorrow, and get used to like not immediate results. And I think health is, of course, the same way. We have to eat and hydrate today so we can feel good tomorrow. So for that gig tomorrow, so we can feel really good. So let's, prepare, think about that gig tomorrow today. So a little bit of thinking ahead. And he's very selfless and very humble. And Yeah, amazing inspiration. I love listening to the interviews. So thank you for all the interviews, because I love listening to jazz interviews, and it is really fun.
Oh, cool, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sometimes I feel like I'm operating in a vacuum, but I feel like sometimes the jazz community, the ears are really wide open. So I'm glad that you dig it. It goes over well. So I'm curious with this album and outgrowth of, or how did it come about creatively?
This album, well, there were some songs through from 2018, from the last time I talked to you till now, had even more kind of spiritual growth, and then getting some opportunities for some gigs, and some of those gigs they had to be all originals. And so all of a sudden I'm going back to my catalog and looking at all my originals and be like, oh, okay, we need 4 hours of originals. And so that was, that really helped. I needed to write some songs, and, during 2020, some songs, I was home a lot. And so maybe that's why I gained a little weight. Maybe it was, too much pizza or something, but also there was a lot of time alone, and some songs were coming out. A song like Eastbourne, kind of like, woke up out of a nap, and this kind of chord progression just kind of fell out a little bit, or, they all come out a little different, but yeah, and getting to play those tunes live a lot really solidifies them compared to the last album, where I didn't necessarily get to play those tunes live as much as before this album. And so getting to workshop them live, so that was more of this experience. It was, a lot of these tunes had been played more, and so it gave me more confidence in the studio. And then this one, I just wanted to be, the last one, acoustic bass, things like that. This one, I wanted to be a little more electric bass. There's more organ, still a lot of Fender Rhodes, trumpet, and I just wanted to really make an album that I would enjoy cruising around listening to. And so it's got some synth guitar on it, which some people would say that's kind of taking a risk, but I like the way it sounds. And so there's a couple songs that have synth guitar solo. There's some fretless guitar. I just wanted to take some chances, and I think I'll do the same thing on the next project, just having some tunes and then getting in the studio and having some fun, and putting it together in the way that I really like, and taking my time. This album took more time. I spent more time in the studio versus the last album, which was pretty much just a live recording in the studio. This one was more a studio project, I guess you could say.
And I think maybe that's another outgrowth of this. I noticed there's been some more electronica elements, some more pushing the sonic barriers to places that may not have been broached before this pandemic. Do you think that might be the case too?
I hadn't thought about that, but that's very interesting to think about, those positive, unexpected results. Going back to, thinking about like the Depression in the 1930s and there's some really great things that came out of, you think about this Great American Songbook from the 30s and all those great songs, and would that have all happened if not for the Depression? I don't know, but that's exciting to think about. And I love the idea of people taking chances and going deep and putting out something, that they're really happy with and excited about, and people can say, oh, I haven't heard something like that, or I think that could be really great.
The one thing too, you've been very active on the live scene, and I think when I take my brain back to before the pandemic and just how flush and how full and everything was it was such a well-oiled machine here. It seems like a lot of those things have picked right back up. John Scott's still busy down on 18 and Vine. Gerald's done great work with the Blue Room. They're doing this Afternoon Thursday series. But I think in general, too, there's probably other pieces that I don't recognize from where I'm at as a spectator. So from your perspective, how do you see this rebuild and happening in Kansas City? And how do you think we've done as a city so far?
That's a good question. I think it ebbs and flows. And, when you first, really try to start breaking into the Kansas City scene, you go to all the jam sessions. And I remember, 2012, or especially 2014 through 17 or 18 for me, I remember I could go to a jam session almost every day of the week. And that was really fun. And I was doing that. And then as you probably can't do that forever, although some people do, and I respect that. But, eventually if you start to get more gigs, or maybe you just get busy, you can't feel like you can't do that anymore. And so you don't necessarily see all the jammers coming in. You see them though, when I play at the Blue Room on Monday, you still see so many. It seems better than ever because, the sax players are lined up outside the door, and, a lot of hungry, great musicians. And I think Kansas City will always have that there. But I remember, there were some things that were closing beforehand. Like I remember, it was a shame when Californo's closed. I think that was before 2020 March, and we had a jam session there every Wednesday. It felt a couple times like every time I would get a gig, or like a steady gig, it would, like, the place would close or something. I remember getting the Californo's, getting a monthly at Californo's, and then it was a month or two later and they closed, and I was like, and something similar happened to the pandemic. I got a weekly at Green Lady, and then the pandemic happened, and I was like, oh my gosh, how does this keep happening? But it ended up working out, and it's amazing to see how even the club owners can readjust and thrive because of their dedication, because of their knowledge and intelligence. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And speaking of, those live elements, what do you hope we all realize about the power of live music now that we're getting back to it?
Power of live music. It's so fun to have an audience reaction. And I wish, in the studio, that's one thing I miss is sometimes I think if I'm going to the studio, let's have some people there, or let's have like a couple waiters and waitresses walking around with a tray or something, because it is so nice to, to have you, because who's in the audience. Sometimes sometimes you don't know. To have an audience member come up afterwards that's so moved that they want to shake your hand or say something nice. I remember you asked Sonny or some of the nicest thing that someone has said, and I can remember a couple nice things. Even someone saying, "Oh, every time I see you, you're always smiling," or something like that. You can take that with you and just and it can help keep you positive. Hearing someone say that, because I definitely don't feel like I'm always smiling or positive, but that was nice of them to say. And one time, someone from Portland. There's so many people coming from around the country to Kansas City to hear jazz, and they were from Portland or brother and sister, one from Portland, one from California. And he said, you were born to do this. And I thought that's just about the nicest thing someone can say. That just felt really nice. And so to have someone come up, and obviously there's the other element too, where sometimes people are a little too familiar, a little too comfortable, and they come up and they start talking to the organ player in the middle of his solo. But the live element is to have that audience right there. And I don't try to base how I feel about my solo or the performance. I try to not make it based on the audience reaction, though, because you can have a great solo and the audience may just be. Sometimes audiences are very engaged, and the next night, same place, they can be a little bit withdrawn. And the audience has they talk about this in the acting world, but the audience has kind of like a group intelligence, and they're very smart as a group. And so there's just kind of the audience of the night, and it's just hard to predict. And so when I finish a solo, I try not to even judge myself too much, although I want to grow from my solos. But no matter if an audience goes crazy about it or doesn't react at all, I kind of want to feel the same. I don't want to be necessarily swayed by that. And although I love having them there, and I do play for the audience, I feel like sometimes people say, oh, I play for the other musicians, or I play for myself, or I think it's for all those things. We play for the audience, and then also play for the musicians and play for ourselves. I really like to keep God in the center and try to, who do we put in the center really? If we can put him in the center, it can be very nice, I think. So that's some of where I'm thinking, some of my philosophies.
Let's get to the good business here of Blue Gold. Wonderful album, highly recommended. Anybody out there that wants to pick this album up, find out about live gigs, anything more about you and your musical life, where's the best place to go?
JeffShirley.com. You can find the links to the album, the physical or the streaming or the MP3s, and that's a great place. You can also go to Amazon, just type in Jeff Shirley Blue Gold. And can I mention, you said it's okay to mention a couple gigs? Yeah, I'm playing with RSS Trio as well as the Jeff Shirley Organ Trio at Green Lady Lounge. So Jeff Shirley Organ Trio right now is Mondays and Thursdays, late night, 10:30 p.m. or later. And then I'm with RSS Trio and Mark Slim on Friday, Saturday, Sunday at Green Lady, also same time period, 10:30 or later. Doing that and playing there a lot, and that's the main thing right now, as well as teaching.
Right on, man. Jeff, hey, it's been great to catch up with you. Thanks for taking a minute out. I look forward to getting this on Neon Jazz.
Oh, this is a thrill, Joe. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Kansas City and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Jeff for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com and also joedomino.com, and there you can kick in via Patreon or PayPal. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.